Hi, guys. How are you tonight? I just wanted to go over a few things that I heard today. And I'm sure a lot of you have also heard these things because it has made it around YouTube. And one of those things was the interview that Ziggy did with Lora White. And the second thing is the uh, response that was given by Candace. And I heard something today that I wanted to talk about that was so different than what everybody else was saying. And I want to listen to this with you guys, just this little bit here. And let me go ahead and play this. Up.
So, I don't know. Do you know if Cotton knows the Wells?
Yes,
He does
did
know him?
know the Wells. And I heard him tell Fred that he was fooling around with what's her face,
With Candace?
that little girl's mommy. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to talk about. Hello, everybody. Hello, Lip Locked. Hello, Jerry. Hello, Blue Eyes. Okay, so what I wanted to say about what I heard in that, I'm not saying that it's true what Lora said about Candace. What I wanted to talk about was it's true. It doesn't mean that Laura's lying because Lora said she heard Cotton Simpson say these things to Fred. And that's what I found interesting was that she's saying she overheard Cotton Simpson talking about the Wells, talking about Candace. And Candace says she doesn't know the guy. I believe Candace. I believe Candace doesn't know the guy. Or if she may have seen him in passing but doesn't even realize who he is. What I wanted to discuss was how this man talked to Fred about the Wells. He talked to Fred about Candace. That's weird. That and Laura saying she acts absolutely confident in her response. And I kind of want to pull it back again and listen to what she said one more time.
Awesome. I don't know.
Yes,
He does
did
know him?
know the Wells. And I heard him tell Fred that he was fooling around with what's her face,
With Candace?
that little girl's mommy. Yeah.
Candace or
I did hear that.
Marlena?
Okay, there it goes again. So this man, honestly, I believe Laura overheard this. She seems so confident in this. This man would have sat there and talked about having some type of relation with, not relationship, but some type of a relation with Candace. That this man actually talked about Candace in that way. I think that's really weird for it being somebody that Candace says she absolutely doesn't know. And I will play the
Marlena
rest
Crawford
of
or
this
Candace?
because I
Candace.
also have the response from
Oh my
Candace on
God.
here.
He said he was messing around with her.
Mhm.
Who wasn't? Who wasn't? Candace. Man, she likes. Yeah. How much?
And say that I had anything to do with this guy that I have never met, didn't even know his name until just recently, didn't know where he even come from.
Exactly.
It's just it
Okay, so there we go again. I just wanted to play that and Go ahead, I'll drop that down. I just thought it was just interesting to me. It's interesting that here's a man that has been talked about from Fred Hill, but also Laura's saying she's actually overheard the man talk about Candace and the Wells, that he knew them. That's really creepy that a guy, you know, says he knows somebody enough and talks about them and saying he, you know, was messing around with her, and it being somebody that Candace absolutely says she doesn't know. That's very strange, especially when, you know, my theory on the camp up on the hill, um, and how I feel of the situation with Cotton Simpson and Chad Arnold and Fred Hill and Lora White, all of them, that was this man watching the Wells. Law enforcement even mentioned to Don Wells that they discovered a little area up there on that higher up hill that looks down onto the Wells property, you know. And this live isn't going to be that long. It's going to be a quick, short live. I just wanted to come in and discuss how I feel. And like, I don't think she knew Cotton. I think Cotton knew her, and Cotton knew the Wells, but she didn't know him. I that's how I feel in it. Feel just in my own speaking with Candace. I feel like I can tell when someone's, because I know when she's lying. I've seen a lot of lies she's told. This one, I don't think she really knew this guy. I don't, and I feel like this may be the person watching the house. You know, say, well, I saw Candace tonight, Kate, and she actually looked pretty good. She looked very happy and very healthy. I will say that. I know everyone doesn't agree with me. A lot of people feel like the family is involved, but I've just done way too much research on this that it's impossible for them to have done this. It's impossible. If they did it, I think I would have already found the way. Like, I really feel like, but other people that I have looked into, I really feel like there could be a possibility. You know, the way that the scent tracks went up the driveway, I mean, down the driveway and up Limestone Branch, and then they go and they, through the water, there's no scent. And then again, there's scent right at the where the Simpson Road is, that goes around, and then there's no scent again, and then it ends up back again at Fred Hill's driveway. I mean, to me, that would be her going along the branch. Like, that's the only thing that would make sense to me, is her going up along the branch there, that creek, and ending up at Fred's driveway. And I can't say whether or not I feel Fred and Laura could be involved in this. They did leave and they were gone most of the evening. You know, they didn't even get back until after the police had already blocked the road and everything. But who was there was Chad Arnold and Roy Simpson. They were there when Fred and Laura left. When they got back, they were no longer there. Those people, they left the hill in that time period. Where they went, I don't know where they went. I have like theories because of where the other scents hit up on the Sexton's property that also used to belong to the Simpsons. The 138 property that also belonged to the Arnolds. there's property there that they're very familiar with back behind the wells. And I just, when you have a child sent in those areas and the parents are sitting at the house, it's very hard to say that the parents took the children to those areas, took the child to those areas. I saw her in video chat when I talked to her. That's where I saw her, Kate. Um, I had some questions for her and she answered them for me, but they weren't anything, to do with this. Yeah, see something, say something. They had many undesirables in the environment. And when parents aren't always watching them, anything can happen. And that's exactly how I feel. I feel it was a abduction, but abduction of opportunity. And I wouldn't even call it a flat out abduction. It's a child wandering down to the neighbors and the neighbors doing something with her and taking advantage of her and moving her and taking her somewhere else. That's how I feel. It is the only thing that out of every scenario that I could come up with seems like it could make sense. I have, if you watch that interview today with Ziggy and the way that even Lora White was describing Cotton Simpson, that's a side of Cotton Simpson that we haven't heard yet. We haven't heard the side where she says she felt creeped out by the guy. She felt like he was undressing her with his eyes. That's what she said, and that's a side of Cotton Simpson we haven't heard. And it may be because this is a side of Cotton Simpson that he wasn't before. Before he was kicked out of his house, was, using heavily up there with Fred and Laura up there on the hill with them. It's something that I've talked about earlier. And yeah, the motorcycle guy was Jeff Inslee. He was the motorcycle guy. But one thing that I wanted to talk about was, so at this time, you see Cotton Simpson, he lived on Mountain View Road. He lived there with Cindy Simpson. Chad Arnold lived with Francis Dykes over there on the Dykes property right off of Beach Creek. But at this time, the dynamics changed for both of them. And it may have been due to the fact that they were both using a lot of drugs at the time. Laura even said her and Fred had gotten really sick. They were all dope sick. Like they were all using so much and they weren't in their right minds anymore. When you push your body to that point of drug addiction, you're not yourself anymore. So with Cotton Simpson, and we look back at the criminal history and the criminal records, we see that the few years leading up to June 15th, 2021 is when his decline began. And it started with a lot of alcohol use and drug use. But what it eventually escalated into was in August, his family even filed a restraining order against him. By November, his wife completely left him. But prior to that, she was having issues with him and he wasn't staying at the house. They had been not getting along and he was in a heavy active drug use at the time and was staying around Ben Hill Road there with the rest of the addicts who were, involved in what even Fred got charged with, maintaining a drug dwelling. To be maintaining a drug dwelling, that means he had to have been having a home, an area, a piece of property where there was a lot of people that were using drugs there. And so uh, now I'll be honest with you, Jackie 11. I don't think they took her that far at first. I feel like they took her over there, um, uh, up towards where Mary Sexton's property is, over by 138, all in that area, and then later moved her out, um, because of the scent tracks that were found in that area. Um, the other thing that was um, noted that uh, made me think is that there actually was a vehicle that was seen parked on the side of the road abandoned around that time also. And it makes me wonder if it would have been one of their vehicles. Um, I'm not sure on that, but it was very odd that on Beach Creek there was a report of a abandoned vehicle parked on the side of the road with the doors open. But there is access if you pull in to where off of Beach Creek up to the creek, you can kind of pull in there, and park in the woods there to where somebody could come down the other side of Simpson Road from where the Mary Sexton's property is, where that big hill is that overlooks the Wells property, and where that 138 property is, where the Simpson Cemetery is, that private cemetery that is owned by the county of Hawkins. So when I look at the footprints, it's kind of like following a breadcrumb trail, like where you have to follow the evidence. You can't just jump and blame somebody with no evidence. You know, there's no evidence at the house that Summer died there. There's no evidence of any of that. But there is scent evidence that she was somewhere else other than on that property. And that is up Limestone Branch Creek there, Fred's property, and the Mary Sexton's property up on the hill. And then also down right before you get to the creek itself of Beach Creek, on the property side, not the road side of the creek, there's also was scent there, which makes me think that's how they took her out of that area, is through there, which would have bypassed where all the police and stuff were, and they could have got, or where even when Candace was looking, if it happened even sooner than before the police got there, they could have removed her out that backside from there. But people change when they're under the influence of drugs. And this, like I was saying, this man might have been a very nice man at one time. And a lot of people stand up for him. But what I see is the people that, speak highly of him and say that he could never have done this are people from his past. None of the people were from the current time in his life, because the people in the current time in his life, they didn't speak out, on YouTube or in any type of groups standing up for him. But where they spoke out was in their in police reports, showing that they filed, even his sister and brother-in-law, who were his neighbors, filed restraining orders on him. His girlfriend had kicked him out, and they separated. By November, they were completely separated and not together anymore. So there does show some type of shift in his personality and what was going on with him at the time that took him down to a different level. And I want to go there also with Chad Arnold. It was the same thing. Francis Dykes also filed a restraining order and kicked him out at the time. He was not living where he was living before. He was going back and forth between his mom's over on California Avenue in Church Hill and friends' houses. And his mom, there was an interview done with Ziggy. She hasn't really released much of it, but I've heard a lot of it, where the mother talks about how Chad, she doesn't know when Chad comes home. He comes home every few days. Whenever he comes home, he doesn't have a set routine. He doesn't always stay there. So that showed a pattern that he may not have been there. He was staying somewhere else also. And the location noted by witnesses, and Candace being one of the witnesses, is saying they were up on Evett Fred's property. So, we have, that take. But what I wanted to come on and talk about just was what I heard, what Lora said, is that Cotton Simpson said. Lora said she heard Cotton Simpson tell Fred these things. That doesn't mean they're true. That doesn't mean what Cotton said is true in any way. It could be true in his mind. You have a lot of people that become obsessed and become stalkers of people who believe these things. I believe Candace that she doesn't even know the guy. I don't think she knows the guy. She never heard of him until his name was mentioned by Fred Hill. But this man knew Candace, and this man knew the Wells, because just like right now, you guys can see me and you know me. I don't know you. I don't know who you are, because you're watching me. I think it's similar scenario. This man was watching them. I thought it was kind of creepy how he said he messed with the girl up there on the hill, but he never really mentioned the name. He never said I was messing with Candace. He just was talking about the Wells and messing with them up there. I would really like to know, and I'm going to look more into it, if some of these statements were made after Summer went missing also, because Lora had even said down to the day that he died, like within those days, he was up there at their house. So who was he messing with? Was this some kind of sick thing in his head, with him believing that he was messing with, the girl from up there on the hill? That's, I would be real interested in hearing when he said these things, if he said these prior to Summer going missing or post to her going missing, because that would make a little bit of difference to me of him speaking on this, because we all know that it could not have happened post, because Candace has not been there that much, and she's been under the radar so much that somebody would have known and seen her messing with Roy Cotton Simpson post Summer going missing. So I would be really interested in hearing from Lora on that, and I'm hoping Ziggy can maybe ask her and talk to her and find out when he said these things, if this was prior to her going missing or post. Because if he said he was messing with the girl, the Wells girl, the girl up at the Wells, and it was after Summer went missing, that's pretty damning, that's strange. I think the statement that Lora made is very, very strange, due to the fact that Candace doesn't know this guy. And I mean, I could repeat it 100 times, and I didn't see it like everyone else did, and accusing Candace of having some kind of another fleeing with somebody, like she's just this like sex goddess or something. I saw it differently. I saw it, wow, this man is talking to Fred about the wells. This man said that he messed around with the girl up at that house. That's odd, especially when the person says they don't know him. Especially when a camp was found up on that hill by Mary Sexton's, a property that was looking over the Wells property. And this was told to Don Wells by law enforcement that this was there, especially when the scent, excuse me, goes from the Wells driveway up Limestone Branch to Fred's. You know, it's just all odd. Um, You know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to make this a long live. I'm probably going to end it here very shortly. And I believe Candace also, Jackie, EW, he knew the Wells according to Fred and his girlfriend. That does not make it true, period. Fred and his girlfriend are addicts as well. And what you're implying about Cotton's addiction applies to them also. Yes, absolutely. And they admit it. Laura even said they are so sick even with it. It does. But the difference is Laura and Fred actually left that day. They left. They weren't there. Um, everybody they know that they left. They have an alibi. They were somewhere else, and people saw them somewhere else. They knew they were somewhere else, so they weren't there. But the other two people were there, and they were left there, and that's um, why I feel maybe I lean a little bit more towards them as being involved. But that's true. It's true. But if you listen to Laura M9, that there are many strays in and out of Don's house, messing with the girl could have been anyone at that house for real. That's true. It could have been, but the way Laura said it, the way that she overheard him speaking was as if he knew the Wells. Like, yeah, he knows the Wells. He totally knows the Wells. You know, it didn't seem like she had no hesitation with that answer, which was odd because she kind of struggled with some of her other answers. Like she didn't really want to say or answer them. Yeah, and it could have been Crystal or it could have been Marlena. That's true. But I think if it was Marlena, especially because that's Fred's cousin, I think, and they know her very well, and she also goes up there to the hill. They would have it would have been said it was Marlena. Um, and the Crystal didn't really stay there at their house. She came in and out a few times, had her little fling thing with them, and then wasn't around at all after that. Let me see. It says, it's on the 3. On which 3, M9? You focus on the 3, especially Dawn. I just like, for me, it's hard for me to go there when the evidence doesn't lead there. Okay? Now, we could all want it to be that way. We could all see him and be like, "Oh, he's a shitty guy. We want him to we want him to have done this." But when you look at the evidence, it just doesn't lead to him. Like, he's done really crappy things. He's not a good guy. Candace isn't the greatest person either. She's not a great person. But she's like, some of the stuff she's done, I actually can understand. I understand some of it, but there were some lies told in the beginning. Um, what I always go back to is if you look at the psychology of a person and their personality and the things, first off, if it was planned, she was so worried about the things that she did that day, especially with the young man, and so worried about getting in trouble for those that she actually didn't focus as much on her daughter at that moment because she was so afraid of those things. So a person, if almost like in a fight or flight situation, you are only going to focus on the one danger coming at you. You almost block everything else out. You get tunnel vision. So if she did something to her daughter, her tunnel vision would have been that. And it wasn't. Her tunnel vision was she didn't buy some vapes and she didn't let the guy drink some twisted teas. Like when you she was so worried about getting in trouble for those things because she didn't even think about getting in trouble for her daughter. That right there led me to believe that she's not involved. And Don Wells has a lot of alibis, and if he didn't, he would already be arrested because they were very focused on him. They wanted it to be him too, and they can't make it him, or they would have already made it him. I, when he was sitting in jail, they would have made it him then. They would have. They would have pushed it, and they would have found some way to do it, and they didn't. Um, I there's just too many outside forces around that area that it could be versus the parents. Like everybody wants to go to the parents because it's so easy, and the thing with Candace and Don, you either love them or hate them. You're either on one side or the other in this. I'm not on any side. I'll be on. I like them. I like them. But if they were guilty, I would see that they are guilty, and it wouldn't change my mind, whether I like them or not. I started liking them when I started really researching and looking into them and seeing that they could not have done this. First off, they're not that smart. Um, they have been arrested for every crime they've committed. They've been caught. They've been caught for really dumb crimes. Um, Number two, they tell on themselves and they tell on each other. That is a pattern that you've seen with both of them. Um, the moment one person accuses them, they turn on the other. And I'm just talking right here about just personality types and why I believe they didn't do it, because they would have already told on each other, because they tell on each other for everything. They don't hide anything. They almost intentionally set scenarios up to set the other person up in something. And this isn't new behavior. This is behavior you could see it going back very far in their history and their relationship. They throw people under the bus. They throw their other kids under the bus at times by saying that the boys were the last to see summer. They have no problem blaming somebody else. So they would have blamed each other really fast. So I don't know if that's for me, Kate, but thank you if it is. I appreciate that. I just have been really, really researching it. And I try to go into not just looking at what people say on the surface, but I try to go into why somebody would say something. Um, and maybe it's just me because I'm a messed up person and I have a really hard time taking people's word for face value. So I always try to look into what somebody's doing by saying something. The other thing I look at is word patterns. So if you listen to Candace and she starts talking about something and then all of a sudden changes the subject and brings up something else, it's because she's associating the two subjects. So you'll see in the Chris McDonough video when she goes from talking about the twisted tea to all of a sudden her mom wanting the flowers, and she told her mom it's illegal to take the flowers. That's because she grouped those things together in her mind, and those were the things that she did illegal that day. And so she has grouped those things together. Um, and I believe they did take flowers from the park that day. And those were the flowers they planted that they still don't admit to. But, you know, and those are that shows you again when you talk about tunnel vision and a person who is afraid of something, especially of being arrested or caught, your tunnel vision would be on the one main thing, and that would be either like killing your daughter or selling her or something like that. You wouldn't think about the flowers. So that's where when I started looking at these behaviors, um, that's when I was like, okay, these people aren't guilty. They're not guilty of this crime. They're guilty of lots of things. Very guilty of lots of things, unfortunately. But I think they had nothing to do with their daughter going missing. I also believe that Candace left the hill that day, and I've discussed this in other videos prior to it with her telling the boys she'll be right back. You know, it would not be something that you would say if you already left once. You already weren't there. You already weren't there. Why you say I'll be right back? You weren't there. You only walked to the door to go back to where you just came from, you know? So that was the other thing. I felt like she left the hill that day and told the boys she was going to be somewhere. And I think Summer wandered off during that time when nobody was home to watch her, you know, and the boys were busy, you know, and they should never be blamed. I mean, they shouldn't be responsible for their sister like that. Um, the mother left her home alone, which then, you know, and there's guilt there, I'm sure, because the fact of her making the decision to leave the hill, you know, and leave her daughter unsupervised, even though her mother was there, but she says she was taking a nap. So, unless she went with her. I also thought the scenario could be Grandma was sitting on the steps and said, "Man, I really want those flowers from that park. You told me I couldn't get them, but I really want them." And they went back and got them. That's my other thing I was thinking. Did they go back to get those flowers? Is that where they left and went? You know, that was something maybe that could have happened to me, but me in my mind. But definitely, I think she left. And plus, people said they saw her leaving, but she tried to say she's looking for Summer at the time. I don't know. And then Captain Obvious, I have just recently started watching you. I almost judged you from association. I took time to watch a few videos, and this live, boy, I was wrong to judge by association. I will say I talk to everybody. I will collab with anybody that I believe everybody has an opinion. Um, if I shut everybody out, you know, I want to hear you tell me why you think it is one way. Like, and I'm sure you're talking about Ziggy because a lot of people don't like Ziggy. Um, you know, we have completely opposite opinions on what happened. Um, the only thing we do agree on is that we both believe Fred um, is telling the truth. And actually, she doesn't believe it as much because it doesn't fit her theory. which is crazy. I believe Fred more than she believes Fred because it doesn't really fit her theory that well because she also believes the parents are involved. I I don't know. I can't make it fit for me. Can't make it fit. The only scenario that I could come up with is if somehow Candace removed Summer from that hill is by accident. Is that Summer climbed in the back of the vehicle when Candace was going to leave and go somewhere and didn't know she was back there, took off and left. Summer was hiding. She took off and left. Um, and she went wherever she was going. Summer got out of the vehicle there. Candace was in a hurry. She knows the kids are home alone. She jumps right back in to the vehicle, drives back home again, and Summer gets left somewhere. That's the only thing. Priceless sells those same succulents that were in Grandma's flower pots. Best prices. Often wondered if they bought some there. You know what, toaster oven? That's very, very possible. You could be right. It could be that. It could be that. You know, I just felt the emphasis on that story was very strong. Um, that uh, you know, when somebody's telling a lie, sometimes they just put so much emphasis on something, and it kind of like I felt that with the story. That's why I always thought there was something weird to it. But you could be right. I mean, it could. I had 3 theories, and I keep finding reasons to debunk them. Golden. And exactly, you know, and that's where I've been with it. I've had every theory. And if you watch some of my earlier videos, I actually thought maybe the parents did have something involved with it. The only way I will say this, if the parents had some type of involvement, Summer's alive. Absolutely. That's what I believe. There was no accident, no nothing. They literally sent her to go live with somebody else. If the parents are involved, that person came and picked her up and took her away. That's the only way I can make if the parents are involved fit. It's the only way. One reason is Dawn and Candace in one of their first interviews that they did on WGHL, when Dawn speaks of her saying that she's probably dead somewhere and this and that and all these things. And the way Candace looked at him, like, oh my God, Dawn, I can't believe you're lying. Why are you saying this? She literally looks at him like that. And it made me think, okay, but, and he had such a straight face in saying it. Like, I think, like, for me, if I was going to say something like that about my child, I think it would be when I was in tears. Um, when when a person speaks and they have emotion behind it, they will have pitch changes in their voice. And he did not have pitch changes in his voice. He said that completely flat, no facial expression, just flat out said it. So I think it's a lie. I think he said that like as a lie. This was my theories like in the very beginning. Like, no way, he's trying to throw people off, you know? And the way she looked at him with oh my God, I can't believe he just said that. That made me realize like they didn't do something to their kid. They didn't do something to their kid. And if they did, they just had some friend or family member pick them up and she's totally alive and healthy somewhere else. But now seeing what it's done to them, I don't believe that is even plausible. And unfortunately, in my opinion, you know, that she's probably not alive anymore, or somehow somebody would have found something, you know? Yeah, and law enforcement did say she was alive from the pond. she went somewhere else before home. Yeah, they went to the pond. They went to Sonic. They went to Walgreens. They went to Priceless Foods. And I can't confirm it. And I'm going to ask her. I haven't really asked her about it because I don't like to go like really question her deeply about things if she did stop at Dollar General or not. Because it was rumored that maybe she did. Yes, like lip lock. That look is branded on your brain. Yeah, it branded on my brain too. That was a look of utter shock. Like, I can't believe you just said this. And it really threw me back like, wow, you know, Candace never heard that out of Don's mouth before. They never discussed it. She never heard that out of Don's mouth before. That was the first time hearing it. Or if they did talk about it, it was the first time. She never expected him to say something like that on TV, you know. You heard Candace say it, that she went to Dollar General. Is that what you're talking about? What if she got into Grandis meds or something? She didn't get into Grandis meds. They, people get into children get into medication all the time of people, and then they go to the hospital. My son, so my mom, she had got this prescription for these little water pills, and they were blue. There's like a little mosquito flying over here. She had these little blue pills, and she just got her new prescription, got it from the doctor, and she's had them sitting on the counter. And my son, he was about 4, um, opened the bottle and ate some of them. And we called 911 and we gave him Epicet syrup. They took him to the emergency room. They made sure he was fine and that he was throwing up and everything. And that was it. They wrote about it. Why would you get, it, it's, if a child died from that, even like, accidents happen. That's just an accident that could happen. Like, if my child would have died that day from that, it still was just an accident. People, she would have taken her to the hospital, called 911 or something, but she wouldn't have, there's no reason. Like, why would you commit a bigger crime? That's my thing. Why would you commit a bigger crime to hide a smaller crime? That makes no sense. So, I can't, like that. It just doesn't fit for me. Committing a bigger crime to hide, it's not something that's not even a crime. That's just an accident, or even, like some other type of neglect. Because in the end, the boys got taken away anyways. So it's not like, and immediately she could have came clean then and talked about something then and tried to work out a plan to keep her boys and say, hey, this is what happened. I'm sorry, and try to fix it. But she stuck to this. She stuck to it in the point of losing her boys even. So, which that's not even the case. They haven't completely lost the boys. They're just removed from the home still. They're still going to court. It's not completely over with. But I say, plus JS wanted folks to think they were not welcomed and being played with, if anything, was told, etc., and keep folk from going back and talking to them. I mean, I've always believed Fred. I also never thought he was playing a prank with the bones. Yeah, he wasn't playing a prank with the bones. He just said, hey, there's some bones over there. Let's go look at them. I was wondering about them, There's things when, I don't think he was trying to do anything. He didn't even look at the bones really yet. He just kind of glanced and saw some, mentioned them mention them, and then they all went over and looked at them together themselves, and it was a mix of bones. And um I think we're like in like a burn pit, like an ash pit, even like somewhere even burned. So they weren't sure. So they thought that it would be interesting maybe to see if law enforcement would want to look at these, because what it always gets, because of Jody Sue coming out saying this was a big joke when it wasn't a joke at all, was they knew there were animal bones in there. They knew there was. They thought, hey, maybe somebody put these animal bones with these other bones to try and disguise them, and they burned a body here or something. That was what was, but it never really, because it wasn't anything, nobody ever came out further and talked about that. It was just made up about my take on the red truck. I believe there is a red truck, and I believe the red truck belonged to Cotton Simpson. That's what I believe. And I believe that he replaced some parts on it and primered it, and that's what he was driving later. I believe the red truck belonged to Cotton Simpson, to Roy Simpson. I do. Let me see, what book are you speaking of? What is she talking about? Plot. I don't know. Here's one. Okay. Do you lend any kind of credence to the possibility of an OD on way home from Warrior? That last video photo makes her look in distress. Her nail beds, for example. What if Summer never woke up? I don't. I don't. One reason is I know drug addicts, and drug addicts don't share medication like that. Um, they wouldn't. They would have never gave her anything that would have OD'd her to kill her. That's my opinion on it. They would have saved their medication for themselves. They fight. They fight between each other for it. I seen my aunt was she's deceased now, but she was very addicted to pain pills. And it was so funny. Me and my dad, we were sitting in the living room, and my aunt was sitting on the recliner, and this lady can't walk barely at all. She like hunches over, and she's like barely making it. And somehow a pill fell in the middle of the floor in the living room. And this was at my parents' house. It fell out of their stuff, her pocket or something. And my dad goes, "What is that on the floor right there? Is that a pill?" That woman jumped up so fast and grabbed that pill. Like, we saw her move like we never seen anybody move before. And that's like how it is. Like, they don't share their pills. They don't want someone else to accidentally get their pills. I doubt it. I really doubt it. I mean, why, when you can give your kid NyQuil to knock them out, or Benadryl, something like totally harmless and legal? You can give a child some Benadryl. Why would you give them your expensive ass pills that you just spend all day trying to round up? I don't think so. And I don't think they were in a place where she could access them. They would be right in their purse, or right somewhere close at hand. And then you say a handoff is the only scenario I can think of. Yeah, like if the parents in any way, if they did have some type of involvement, they did nothing at all. They had their normal routine, did their normal thing. Somebody drove up there that they knew was coming and picked her up. But I think law enforcement would have already seen that, because they can't even find evidence of a abduction, because they did pull cams. They did pull cams. They just didn't pull cams exactly on that street. But there's cams on along Beach Creek. That's how, they saw things that happened that day, just not they just weren't able to pull cams exactly like the Ring doorbell from Candace's house or right there at their driveway. But they did. I think they've pulled some videos, and they've seen people who've gone in and out of there. And I'm pretty sure that they would have noticed a vehicle that came in that area that was unfamiliar. But or if Candace drove somewhere real quick and dropped her off to somebody. But I used to think, oh, it's weird she put her in that sweatsuit. But then I go and I look back and she's always putting her in those kind of sweatsuits. You know, not in the house. In the house, she was barely dressed. Half the time didn't even have a shirt on. But when they would leave the house, if you notice, they would always just throw some type of sweatsuit on her. Like her doctor's appointments, when she would go places, they would always throw like some kind of jacket and sweatsuit. So that became like, I realized that was common behavior. So then it made me realize that wasn't abnormal for them. And then you say, and the Candace freaked and drove her somewhere. You bought the succulents also at Pricelet that summer. Yeah, I mean, it's very likely they purchased succulents that day. It's very likely. Yeah, Golden. I find Fred very believable. Laura, slightly. There's things that I think Laura intentionally pretends she doesn't know when she knows a lot more than she does. I don't think it's Laura is being dishonest in the things that she says. I think she's being dishonest in the things that she doesn't say. That's my opinion on Laura. Let's see with the comments. Any new comments here? Yeah, I think Chad Arnold is the key. And Chad Arnold doesn't want to talk. He's one of the ones that has not really talked much, you know. The other thing I found interesting too was, okay, so you have kind of like different groups of Arnolds. They are related, but I did the ancestry chart. It's like way, 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 way back. Like so far back, like it's very hard to find a connection. Like great, 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 great grandparents. Like that's how far back it is. It's like they have completely separated in their families, really. And but there are some connections though with the Chad Arnold. And that's what I found really interesting is that so the Cotton Simpson, who's an Arnold, his mom is an Arnold. That's why people thought maybe there was a family connection there. It's not really with the Arnolds. Where it's connected is Roy Simpson was, I wouldn't say married because they never legally married, but they had been together for like almost 20 years. They had like a 18-year-old son together, 17, 18-year-old son. Was Cindy Simpson. She used his last name. She used the Simpson last name. With her, she has a daughter, and that daughter has children with a man. His name is Travis Manis. And Travis Manis was raised with Chad and Jason Arnold. So they were raised together as siblings. So that is where I found the connection between Chad Arnold and Cotton Simpson. This is Sue Animal Lover. This theory makes sense. If this is what happened, I wish Candace would have told Ellie that she left the property instead of this wreck. Come on, story about planting flowers is such a sad situation. Yeah, I think maybe if it would have been said sooner that she left the property, they could have searched differently. I think also Summer going missing because Candace was gone happened sooner. So, you know, the police force come out there and they give that's the reason why time frames are so important. They ask them, when is the last time you saw your daughter? Oh, 5 minutes ago. She just walked in the door and this and that. Okay, so this was at 6 o'clock. I would say, would it be 6 o'clock that she discovered Summer was missing because she started looking a little bit, contacted Dawn a little bit after 6. Law enforcement wasn't called until almost 6:30 because they were still kind of searching for their daughter. Um, well, what if Candace left the hill and Summer really was missing at 4:30? You know, so you tell law enforcement your child doesn't go missing until 6 p.m., then they know a child could only walk so far in 1 hour. It's just, they cannot go any further. It's just not possible if they walked because they're just looking for a lost child walking. So they cannot go any further than a certain radius. So they only search that far. Sometimes they go out to that distance and they work their way in because they want to make sure, like, they trying to find the child that way. But if she left at 4 o'clock, that radius was way bigger, and they never even looked that far. You know, I still have the little bit on there that everybody's lying and she just wandered off. Like, that's still very plausible to me that she walked away, but because Candace left the hill and um, didn't tell anybody, so they only looked for her a certain radius distance that they felt a child could get that far in that amount of time. But she really was like 2 hours further away walking, so they never even searched it. That's still plausible to me, you know. But I really, and maybe Fred, he's just trying to put pieces together like we are. And he knows this Cotton said these weird things. This happened and this happened. He was up there. He left. When he left the hill that day, Cotton Simpson was on his property. Cotton Simpson said some weird ass shit. Cotton Simpson told Lora or told Fred in front of Lora he had a relationship or he was messing around with Candace. Maybe Fred knows it's not even true. So he is putting it together in his own head like, hey, something's wrong with what this guy's saying. That's plausible too, because we haven't heard 100% of Fred's story of what happened, only a little piece, like you said. Okay, so Sweet D, my son can walk 1.5 miles in 40 minutes. We've done it several times together on a country dirt road. Exactly. So can you imagine how many they only went about 2 miles out in radius all the way around. They said it was like a certain amount, 8 miles, but that was like 8 square miles, not 8 miles away from the house straight out. So if she walked more than 40 minutes, if she walked 1 hour, she would have been already further than they looked if she walked it for an hour. The footprints on the ridge lead me to believe Summer never walked up there. That's true. And the other thing that I was thinking was the horses. If somebody could have, they see one thing about with Roy Simpson, Fred Hill, and them, they all ride horses, and there's horses out there. They have access to horses. I always thought, it would make sense if they took her up that hill on a horse. That to me, it's something that they do. They go up all those trails with the horses. Even when they were searching for her, some of those guys brought their horses out and were searching with the horses. So let's see, Captain Obvious. So you believe Fred wore a wire to tape Dawn? If so, when do you believe it happened? I think Fred wore a wire. I think law enforcement set Fred up. I think Fred wore a wire for the law enforcement to listen to Fred. And they just okey doped him. That's what I believe. I think that. I don't think it was to set up Don in any way. I think it was to set himself up because he's the one who ended up getting set up in the end and arrested for all of the things they were doing up there. I think that's what happened. And it was even said, I think, what did they say? Don wore a wire to take Fred too. Like they all were wearing wires. I think they told them all to wear wires on each other so they could just listen to everything that was going on up there, because they didn't know. I think they had them all wearing wires. um, right, Captain Obvious. That makes more sense, right? If they told Fred, "Hey, Fred, wear this wire for us. See if you can help us out. And see if you can get Dawn to say something." But the truth is, they just had a wire on Fred because they just wanted to listen to Fred. So, Jackie, I think there's more footprints on that area. So, the footprints that I know about are um, on the ridge and at the end there of Simpson Road. There were 2 sets of footprints where Simpson Road ends and kind of like comes out, but it doesn't really go through all the way because of the creek. So you can't really drive. You could drive through it when the creek's low, but like if the creek has a lot of water in it, you really can't drive through that way. But there was footprints found near that area right there, that little dirt road area, and then there was footprints found up on the Sexton's Hill. And not only were there footprints, but also her scent, where the scent hit on the footprints. So they had scent dogs hit on these footprints and found the footprints both. So, and Donna Candace didn't take her up there and do that. There'd be no reason that her footprints would be there. The other thing is, I had talked to Candace about that little cemetery because I still feel like there's something to that 138 property that was empty because of the way the footprints were found not that far from it. She didn't even know about that cemetery there, or it wasn't even familiar with that property at all. They didn't really go that way. She said they felt very uncomfortable going down Simpson Road, that they weren't included. They didn't feel well received by the families that lived in that area over there. So they never went that direction. They always just stayed on their side and went out towards Beach Creek. Okay, good night, sweet Dee. Let's read what you guys all have to say. Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Maybe the dude was obsessed with Candace, or Summer. A man who. So you have these men that are pedophiles in a sense, but it's not that they're a pedophile because they're wanting a child. They're wanting a girlfriend, and a real adult woman. They have a hard time controlling an adult woman. So they will pick young girls, and they will groom them, and you see it a lot with girls from the age of 5 until like 10. That's the age range usually that they pull from, is in that age range. And these men will have a fantasy that this is their girlfriend. And that's what I'm a little afraid of. Like maybe this man wasn't even speaking on Candace. He could have been speaking on Summer. And in his mind, he was having a relationship with her. That's something that, you will see a lot in men that tend to kidnap and take young girls. It's in their mind, they create this fantasy that it's their wife or their girlfriend. They will even like buy them clothes, cook dinner for him. It's really weird. But it's very common. You will see that, and I hope he was speaking on Candace, but it would be odd. It would not be a reach that he could have been speaking on Summer in those terms also. That's why I really want to know when he said these things in front of Laura to Fred, if he said them before Summer went missing or after. If he said these things after Summer went missing, I would very strongly believe then that he did have her. At one time he had her. Unfortunately, he is deceased now, and there's not anything we can do about talking to him about these things. It's a shame. Let's see something, say something. Yeah. And if he was abusing drugs or alcohol, his mental state would have been way more warped. Yeah, exactly. And not only that, his wife was leaving him. So he was already being like, he didn't have anybody at all. Um, his whole thing was just like scrapping and cars, like getting parts, getting high. It's just a cycle with them. And, the drug thing, that's why, like, I always say when Fred says he saw Andy that day, I always think, well, it could have been the same day to him. I always say that. It could have been the same day to him because he hadn't slept for days. He saw him the day before, but it could have still been the same day to him. Which is really odd because, he was known, like, supposedly they sleep during the day and they're up all night, but that day they just happened to be up all day. So, you know, everybody that day, their normal routine was off. Like everybody's routine was different than their norm, you know. Um, I will say another thing that leads me to believe it wasn't Dawn and Candace involved in this is the person that dictated that day for them was Candy Hair. So, Candy Hair's the one who had to go to the hospital. Candy Hair's the one who had to pick up her prescription, those things. So the person who made the plan for that day. Now Candace might have, in between Candy Hair's things she needed to get done, she was, killing time in different places. But that day was planned and dictated by Candy Hair. That was another thing that, why would they even go over to the ER? Why would she even go over there or anything? If they were going to plan something, it could have just been way easier just to stay home and do it from home. You didn't have to go to all these places and do all these things and buy twisted teas and buy vapes. You wouldn't have to do that. If that campsite was a lookout. Yeah, see, that was the thing, and Cam from Cracking Cases, they also found a campsite up at the top of the ridge. And I think that's the same one law enforcement was talking about. It's the same place where they found the footprints, unless it was two separate campsites. But the campsite that law enforcement talked to Don Wells about was a campsite that sits on that highest mountain on Mary Sexton's land. And when you're up there, you look directly down onto the Wells property. You can look right down onto their house. So, didn't Ellie go to Fred about Cotton? Maybe they figured this out. Now, so Ellie did, and he did a polygraph. Nobody has the results of this polygraph. I'm hoping eventually it comes out. I would really like to know if, if what he said was true or not. With Fred, it could be true to Fred. I don't think Fred said anything to be deceptive. I think Fred said from his heart what he believed. And whether it's true or not, you know, we'll maybe one day find out. But that I think Fred, with his lie detector test, even if he believed these things, that he wasn't trying to be deceptive in them, he's going to pass his lie detector test anyways. He's giving an opinion like we give an opinion of things that we've heard from sources. You know, he's just speaking on Roy Simpson, of what Roy Simpson said to him. You know, is Mary Sexton the one that was dating the Sherfy guy? Yeah, I believe so. I believe the Sherfys lived up there. Now, I don't know if she was dating him, but I think they were staying up there on her property. I think they had a house on her property separate from Mary, because then Mary is the one who died, right? Yeah, Mary Sexton died. Don Sherfy, the dad, died. The only one that was still alive was the Sherfy Jr., and he was the one who got arrested for okay, Mary's daughter was. Yeah, that makes more sense. That Mary's daughter was dating him. Hmm. And now the Sextons are also related to the Simpsons. You know, they originally were Simpsons, so they're all related. It's crazy. The Arnolds and the Simpsons both are related to the Sextons. I have an ancestry. I could put up a video a little bit clearer. I was going to do that where you guys can see all the connections in the families. Um, it's really crazy. You know, the Wagners, like if you follow it back, you have like the Arnolds and the Simpsons, and like their family lines are both very, very strong. Where Simpson Loop there, Simpson Road, all that whole area used to be called the Simpson Farm. It was all the Simpsons. They lived there. And actually that little cemetery that's there at 138, that was one of the original Simpson family cemeteries. Cotton took her. Where could he have taken her? So that's exactly. So he couldn't really take her back to Mountain View because Cindy Simpson was there. His son was there. His sister and brother-in-law and mother. So there's 3 houses that are all right next to each other on the same property, which was originally an Arnold's property that was eventually willed to Imogene Arnold, but they were given their chunks. But they're all connected right there together. It's 3 little, they're kind of like trailer houses that have been added onto. So they look like houses now. Like Roy Cotton Simpson's house, if you look, it's actually a trailer with like a front added on. It looks like a real house, but it's a trailer, like a trailer. So he wouldn't have been able to go directly back there. But that's why I am proposing. My theory is that I think he went to that 138 Simpson Road, empty property that was there that originally belonged to the Arnolds, and it eventually got willed down through wills and people dying to Michael Arnold, and they didn't live there. They didn't live in it. They lived out of town, and it was empty. They were trying to sell it, and they were fixing it up, and they were cleaning it up. I am proposing that the people that they had cleaning it and working on it may have been Roy and Chad Arnold, because both of them had nowhere to stay and they were trying to make money and they were doing stuff like that. I think they could have been like even just crashing over at this place that was an empty trailer. It's two trailers stacked next to each other, like smashed together, and one of them is completely falling apart, but one side is still livable, kind of livable. Um, yeah, the daughter of Mary. The daughter of Mary, I think, is the one that was dating the Sherfy, Don Sherfy. Yeah, I think they could have went back to that trailer, and then once they realized they were really searching hard, I think that's when they took her up on that hill back behind Mary Sexton's, up on that mountain. And then eventually one of them went back and got a vehicle and came around the other side and they took her out through Simpson Road and they went out that way. I think I I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe at first they were one of them wanted to let her go or something like that because of the fact footprints were on the ground there. Like maybe they were going to let her go, but one person decided, no, we're going to take her. Like out of the two of them, I feel like they were together. I think they were together in this. And I wouldn't even doubt it if Chad Arnold didn't get rid of Roy Simpson or Fred Hill didn't help him, because it's not like it didn't happen before. Jason Arnold, they got rid of Jason Arnold, Fred's best friend. You know, there's few people they got rid of. It's just, the other person that I still see a connection to is the Earl Taylor. Also, I kind of feel like there could be a Earl Taylor connection. So they always say he was found like in that creek there by that house. But if you also go and you look right where the creek is, where his body was found, there is also an automotive shop there too. There's an automotive shop right there in Greene County. Well, that's just really giving me a shadow. Makes me like have a beard. But so it's already been over an hour. I'm going to go ahead and get off of here. I just mainly wanted to talk about how I felt with hearing Lora say Cotton Simpson told Fred he was messing around with the girl up there at the wells, and he knew the wells. That's weird. Especially when Candace says she doesn't know him, never heard of him. But yeah, those two trailers put together. But if you see, they do that a lot. They're like building their own houses out of trailers and stuff, kind of. And they add on to them, put two trailers together. I've known people to stack trailers even and make two stories out of trailers. Or have you seen them like where if you live by the beach, they put the trailers on the stilts? That's weird too. Like I've seen where people literally have like trailer houses like 20 feet in the air on stilts. But I will try to do another live again, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to pull up some of the ancestry stuff again and make some more ancestry videos to make it a little more clear how people are connected, because it, once you see the family connections, it actually makes more sense. Thank you guys so much. Good night. Bye.